Welcome to your first Getting Girls Outdoor tip, getting ready to go horseback riding. My name is Charlie and I am the camp director and outdoor program manager for the Girl Scouts of New Mexico Trails, and I will be going through with you the clothes that you need to get ready, the parts of the saddle, grooming tools to groom your horse, and a couple of things for safety. This will help you meet one step of your junior horseback riding badge. Alright, the first thing that we're going to go over is essential gear, which is really what do we need to be wearing when we go horseback riding. So you see here I've got a pair of Western boots, and we are going to be talking about Western here instead of English. So a Western boot looks approximately like this. They can either have a square toe, a round toe, or a pointed toe, and they'll usually come up to at least your ankle, mid-calf, or higher. And these are to protect your legs. They have a mostly smooth sole. You can see that these have a little bit of grip on them, a little bit of use. And then they also have a heel. So you always want to have a 1 to 2 inch heel, and you want it to go up, cut down like that. The heel is to help to keep your foot from sliding all the way through the stirrup, and it's also to keep it down. It's a little bit more weighted than the toe of your boot. The heel is not to keep your foot from sliding out of the stirrup, but instead from going all the way through. Because if your foot goes all the way through the stirrup, then you're stuck on the horse, and that's not safe. You can get great boots at Savers or Goodwill. You can get them online. You can get them from a family friend. And if you come to camp for horseback riding camp in the summer next year, you can also borrow some boots that we have there for your use. Besides boots, you want to wear long pants, preferably jeans if you're going to be trail riding because it'll help protect your legs. A shirt with sleeves, like this one. It doesn't have to be a long sleeve, just any kind of sleeve. That's to protect your shoulders if you're going trail riding. And because we live at such a high elevation, it's also protect us from the sun. If you're going to be wearing a tank top, which you can't at camp, then you need to be extra sure that you're putting on lots and lots of sunscreen and staying hydrated. You also want to wear a helmet. A helmet is our #1 piece of safety gear. We have helmets for you to borrow when you ride at camp. Otherwise, you can bring your own. It has to be a horseback riding helmet. It cannot be a bike riding helmet. They're made especially for horseback riding. You can see this one specifically goes farther down in the back. I will model this for y'all. This one's my helmet. And you can see that it goes down all the way in the back to protect the nape of my neck. It's adjustable. So if I'm wearing a braid, I can make it looser or tighter. And then when you put your chin strap on, you want to make sure that it sits under your chin, but it cannot go over your chin. So you want to have a little bit of room. You want to be able to talk, but you don't want it to come over. And then of course you also want to wear nice long socks with your boots to protect your legs inside of them. You don't want to get any sort of sores. Next we're going to talk about grooming tools. So before you get ready to go riding, you always want to make sure that your horse is groomed. This serves a couple of different purposes. Obviously it gets them clean so that they're not muddy, and that way there aren't going to be any spots on them that are rubbing. That's really uncomfortable. It also helps us bond with our horses because it shows, just like you would pet a dog, it shows that we're caring for them and loving them, and it helps us check for any sort of injuries that your horse might have that you don't see right away. So we're just going to go over a couple of basic grooming tools. We have 2 different kinds of brushes, and so you can see we've got a whitish brush and a brownish brush, and these come in all sorts of different colors. But what's really important to pay attention to is the bristles. And so these guys right here, these are the bristles. So I'll show you this one first. So you can see how the bristles here are a little bit longer and a little bit more stiff. You can see it when I move them. So this is called a stiff brush or a hard brush, and it's used for getting big chunks of dirt and dust off because it'll really work as a brush. Imagine this is my horse. When you brush them, you want to brush from the head to the tail, or in whatever direction the hair is growing. Because if there's somewhere where the hair is growing up instead of backwards, you just want to pay attention. So you brush in a flicking motion. Then you also have a soft or a dandy brush. So you can see here the bristles are a little bit finer, a little bit smaller, and it's not as stiff. There's a little bit more give there. Now, a soft brush or a dandy brush is for getting off fine pieces of hair and for giving shine to your horse's coat. And it does that by lifting up the oils from their skin and spreading them through the hair. So this really helps keep your horse not just clean, but it also makes them really pretty. Before you use either of the brushes, you want to use what's called a curry comb. This one is a rubber curry. So you've got a handle on the back for your hand, just like that. And then it's got these teeth. So the teeth help get the dirt that's against the skin and bring it to the surface. And you use it in a circle motion, so you just kind of press down and you use it like this. And you move in little circles as you go up. And just like it feels like a little massage on me, it feels like a little massage to the horses. Now, these teeth are not super soft. So you don't want to use this curry comb on any part of the horse that might be injured. So you don't want to use it on bony pieces, right on their ligaments or their joints. So I'm not going to put it like right here onto my elbow. I'm going to use it where it's muscly or fatty, and especially where it's really, really furry. This is really good, especially when we're coming out of the winter, because it helps lift up all of that winter coat and get it off of them as well. So we do curry comb, and then hard brush, and then soft brush. Once we're done with their coat, and sometimes before, it just kind of depends on what you are most comfortable with, we're going to do their hooves. And so we always, always, always want to clean our horses' hooves, even if we took them out maybe an hour or two before. Horses can get stones inside their hooves, and it's just like you get a stone inside your shoe when you're walking, and it can give you a bruise. But because horses have 4 legs, and they only have 4 legs, and they can't do anything else to get around, if something happens to their feet, it's really bad for them. So we always want to make sure that we're taking care of their feet. We can clean the inside of their hooves, we can brush and condition the outside of their hooves, and we can also just make sure that we're feeding them a good diet, because that will help them have healthy hooves and feet. So what you do is there's a particular way to pick up a horse's hoof, which I can't show you without a horse, but that's okay. We'll get there someday. And you use the hoof pick. There's the pick part, and you hold it so you're facing the horse's butt. So we're facing their butt, not their head. And you hold the hoof pick so that your thumb is on the top here. And what this does is it gives you leverage. You're acting as a lever to get the rocks and the dirt out of the horse's hoof. There's a frog in there. It's not an actual frog. It doesn't croak at you. It's a part of the horse's hoof that's fleshy. And so you can get in between the hoof and the frog and all around where the shoe is if your horse wears a shoe, and you just get in there and you get all of the dirt and the muck and the rocks out. And if you just rode like I said and you don't see any rocks, just practice having them pick up their feet, because that's really important for horses to practice too. You can use this brush on the outside to clean the outside of their hoof before you pick it up if you're afraid of getting too messy and you're not wearing gloves, because it is kind of gross sometimes, not gonna lie. You can also use a hoof pick and a brush to clean your boots when you're done riding. You always want to make sure, and you can see this one's kind of gunky, you always want to make sure that you clean your tools when you're done using them. So after we do this video, I'm going to clean this tool, and I'm going to clean some of my brushes, but the curry comb was pretty clean. It's a little dusty, but that's normal. After you have brushed their coat and all over their body, but especially where the saddle goes, always want to make sure it's especially where the saddle goes, then you can do their mane and their tail. Usually brushing and combing their mane and their tail is something we do last when we have time left at camp, only because we're trying to get in as much riding time as possible. But if you own a horse, or if you're leasing a horse, or if you're just going riding, it's something you should do every time, because like I was saying before, it helps build that bond between you and the horse, which is really important. So you can use a regular hairbrush like you would for a person. You can use a dog brush or a cat brush, and they make special brushes that are for horses, or you can use a wide tooth comb. And so what I have here is a wide tooth metal comb, and this is to help get all the knots and the tangles out. Horses don't have as many nerve endings in their mane and their tail as they do the rest of their body, so you can pull a little bit harder. And you always want to do kind of how you would for a human hair, where you start at the bottom and you work your way up. The more often you brush their mane and their tail, the less hard it's going to be and the less time it's going to take to do when you do it, because there won't be as many knots. If you braid your horse's mane or tail, make sure you take out the braids before you put them back in their pen or back in their pasture, because if they roll on those braids, they turn into dreadlocks, and then it's really hard to get them out, and sometimes you have to cut them. And we don't want to cut our horse's hair. Okay, lastly, we're going to talk about parts of the saddle. And right here we have a regular kind of generic Western saddle. And we're going to talk about the most important parts that you need to know about when you're riding. There's other parts that you might need to know if you're going on an overnight or if you're learning about conformation or how to make saddles, but we're just going to do the basics today. So number one, one that you guys might actually all know is the horn. So this is the horn here. The horn is actually not so much for holding onto unless you're barrel racing, but it's for tying a rope to. So the Western saddles were made for working and for ranching. And so the horn here has evolved into being something that you hold onto when you're barrel racing because you don't want to fall, because sometimes your horse is at this kind of angle to the ground, and it's hard to stay on that way. And then we use it for roping when we're on ranches and things like that, or you can use it to hold your pommel bags, which are bags like saddle bags that sit across the front. We do not hold on to the horn when we're learning how to ride, only because we are trying to learn our own balance and how to stay on the horse with our muscles and our body movements, and we don't want to rely on a piece of saddle. Remember what I was saying before about the boots, how we don't want our foot to go all the way through the stirrup? Holding on to the saddle horn is also attaching yourself to the saddle, and that's not safe. We always want to be able to get off the saddle as fast as possible, and so holding on here is not the best thing to do. We don't recommend that, and we don't teach that at camp. The next thing we're going to talk about is the pommel. So the pommel is this whole area here. Now we just talked a lot about don't hold the saddle horn. Want to know what you can hold on to? The pommel. So when you're riding, if you are feeling uncomfortable, or if you're tired and you're having a lot of trouble staying upright and you need to get off, but you need to do something immediately to help hold yourself on, you can hold the pommel. And this is nice because it transitions you really easily from holding the pommel to holding your leg or your jeans or resting your hand. Holding the pommel is really nice because it's an easy place to rest your arm. And you just want to make sure that if you're resting your arm and you're holding your reins, that your reins are not behind the saddle horn. And the reins are just what is holding on to, that's connecting you to your horse's mouth. So you can rest your hand here, you can hold here if you're feeling scared or uncomfortable, because we don't want you to get too scared. But you don't hold the horn. So we got horn, pommel. Hold, hold, don't hold. Okay. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is the cantle. So cantle, spelled like candle with a T, is this part back here. So you may have seen that some saddles have a high cantle, some have a low one, and some, like English saddles, have barely no cantle at all. So the cantle, like I was saying, these were made for ranching and for going on long drives with the cattle and for doing sporting events. So the cantle is to help hold you into your saddle when your horse makes a sudden stop. So if your horse suddenly stops and you're going forward and then you're suddenly going back, you don't want to slide backwards out of your saddle, and so the cantle is there to help hold you in. It also helps us have a more padded seat. So we've got our cantle, and then we've got our seat, which is just this whole area that looks like it's made of different kinds of leather. So seats are padded for those long, long drives with our cattle. So we've got our nice seat back here, and we've got our padded seat here, and then we've got our muscles holding us in the saddle. And so this is a seat here that's slightly padded. You can see when I press on it, it goes down. And it's got what's called here a twist. We're not going to go too much into the twist today. You just need to know that this is a seat, this is a cantle, a pommel, and a horn. We've got some flaps down here, we've got some leather bits down here, we've got some holders. We're not going to go over all of those. I'll tell you the names of them in a moment, but remember, we're just focusing on the key parts here. The next thing that we're going to talk about is called a latigo. So the latigo is a big long strap of leather that holds your cinch, or your girth if you're riding English, your cinch to the saddle. So I'm going to go ahead and undo my one here. So you can see it's attached down here to this D-ring. And they're called D-rings because they're usually shaped like a D. Excellent. So you can see it's attached here to this D-ring. And this D-ring is attached to the saddle. That's not going nowhere. So our latigo, which is a long leather piece, is used to hold our cinch onto our saddle. And what that does is the cinch goes around the belly of the horse and holds the saddle on the horse. So that goes underneath. and it attaches with the latigo. And it's something called a Texas T or a Windsor knot. And they also usually have holes in them. So you can see this one has some holes. And so you can also cinch it up like a belt and then tie your knot. We do use the Texas T or the Windsor knot at camp because it helps hold the saddle on more sturdy. It keeps the knot more sturdy than if you're just doing it with the little holes in the belt loop. I'm going to put my latigo back up properly. We're mostly talking about how to get ready to go riding, but it's also really important to make sure that you're putting your stuff away properly as well, because the nicer we are to our stuff, then the nicer it will stay for the long term. And this one needs to be oiled a little bit. It's very stiff. Okay, and so I can actually show you, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop this up, and then I'm going to tie that Windsor or that Texas T knot, and I'll show you guys how to do it real quick. You can say hi to Charlie Bear in the background. Okay, so here's our knot, so here's our leather, and the loose piece is actually back here behind. So what you do is you come around to the front, so you point towards the front, you put it over the back, like that, and then I'm going to go under, here's my loose end, and through the D-ring. So you see, through the D-ring. And I've made this nice loop here. And so I'm going to come down through that loop, make it nice and tight. I'll put my foot over here. There you go. And so that is our Windsor or our Texas T knot. And that's how we attach the latigo to the cinch, and that's also how we put it away. Excellent. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is our stirrups. So this one actually has two different kinds of stirrups on it, which is fine. This saddle was a wonderful donation from somebody, and we love having it for demonstrations. I'll show you guys in a minute when we talk about the underside, but we can't currently use this on a horse. It needs to be repaired, but for demonstrations, it's perfect. So next we're going to talk about our stirrups, and we'll just do a quick review after our stirrup. Here is our stirrup. Stirrups can be made of plastic, wood, or wood that is covered in leather, and I'll show you that one on the other side, and they hang down by the side of the horse. Your stirrup is what holds your foot kind of in a nice neutral position on the side of the horse. You don't want your foot all the way through the stirrup, and you don't want it kind of hanging out. You can ride without stirrups, but if you're just beginning to learn how to ride, it's a little bit easier to have them because it helps you remember where your legs are supposed to go, so they're not too far forward and they're not too far back. Get one of these boots here. I'm going to show you how your foot is supposed to sit in the stirrup. So we're actually going to take this guy off. This leather piece here that helps protect it when it's on the saddle. So if our stirrup is on our horse, it's going to be kind of facing like this, and the horse's side is over here, because we don't want our toes pointing out to the side of the horse. We want our toes pointing towards their head. So if I'm riding a horse and I'm facing towards their head, and I've got my foot over here, not up by my elbow of course, and I'm going to have my foot inside the stirrup. You don't want your foot like this. That's too far. And you don't want your foot like this, because that's not far enough. You want it just to be on the widest part, you see there on the boot, the widest part of your foot, and your heel is going to be down. And so what that does is it makes it nicely so that if your foot needs to come out of the stirrup, your foot can just come out of the stirrup real safely. And your foot is not going to go all the way through. Obviously my feet are really big, so they wouldn't fit through this stirrup anyway, but if your foot was even just 2 sizes smaller than mine, it would go all the way through. So we've got our foot, widest part of our foot on the stirrup, and our heel is down. And that also makes our legs nice and long. So when you put your heel down, you guys can practice this at home, putting your heel down, it makes the muscles in your leg, all the way from your hip to your ankle, nice and long. And that helps you hold on to the side of the horse and use your muscles a little bit better. If you take your heel and you put it up, it bunches your muscles up. So instead of being nice and long, like a piece of paper or ribbon on the side of the horse, you're going to be like a ball. You're going to be a ball of muscles sitting on top of something round, so your ball sitting on top of a ball, which means you're more likely to fall off. So we always keep our heels down to stay on our horse. We hold the pommel, heels down, sit up straight, and make sure that we're tucking in our tummy so that our belly button is touching our spine. And what that does, if you don't know, is it activates your ab muscles. And your ab muscles and your lower back muscles are what help you stay nice and strong in your saddle. So if anybody ever says that riding a horse doesn't work, they're not doing it right. All right, so the last thing we're going to go over is I'm going to tell you the different parts that we're not going to really go into depth today. And then we're going to review the ones that we did talk a lot about. So remember these flappy bits I was talking about earlier? Flappy pieces of leather? These are called a jockey and a fender. The jockey is just this part here that protects your leg from all of the hardware underneath. And the fender protects the horse from your leg and also you from other gear that's under there, like the stirrup leathers, which is what holds the stirrup on. And then we have some billets, which is just a fun word to say. And billets can hold all manner of things. We have a billet on the other side, which would normally hold our cinch, but we don't have a cinch on this saddle. And then we have some skirts. So all of these back pieces here is called a skirt because it's like on the back side or the bottom of the saddle. Like I said before, we have the twist. Under here, we've got some padding, and I will show that to you. So I want to show you what it looks like. Try not to knock my helmet over. Good. Okay. Excellent. All right, so you can see here what I was talking about, why we can't really use this saddle. So all of this down here is called our padding. And the padding, it helps distribute your weight in the saddle, and it also helps provide a little bit of comfort for the horse. So I want everybody to take your finger, and I want you to push it into your palm. Okay? Push really, really hard. Push as hard as you can. Okay? Hurts just a little bit, right? Now, take your palms and press them together and push really, really hard. Doesn't hurt as much, and that's because the pressure is being evenly distributed across your whole palm. And so that's what the underside of the saddle does for the horse. And it's really especially important, like we were talking about in Western saddles, because it helps distribute that weight for those long periods of time that we're going to be riding or working, or if we're just heavier and bigger. Like I'm 6 foot tall, that's a pretty big person. And so when your padding is all messed up, and there's even parts in here where you can like see bits of the metal, there's a little sharp piece over here, and you definitely don't want those poking into the backside of your horse. And we do put pads and blankets on our horses, but this is the original padding that we want to make sure is in place. We especially don't want any metal bits poking through because that can cut our horse and that could endanger us as well. Okay, if you look here, you can see the tree of the saddle. And it's hard to see no matter what light you're in. It's always hard to see, and sometimes it's even covered up. The tree is just what gives your saddle its shape. Good. The tree is actually the shape here of the seat, the cantle, the pommel, and not the horn. It's not part of the tree, but it's attached to the tree. Trees can be made of wood or fiberglass, and they help give stability to your saddle. If your tree is broken, your saddle is not usable. So you always need to make sure that your saddle is safe and in good working order. And some of that comes from, like I was talking about before, making sure that you're putting everything away properly and you're taking care of it. So this saddle is older, and it has been wintering up at Rancho and summering since we didn't use it this year. So it needs to be cleaned and oiled and then put away nicely. And normally we do this during our big cleans. So if you guys ever come to a big clean at camp, you can learn how to oil a saddle, which is super awesome. And other cool things you can do at our barn and in our horse program. So just to review, here's the parts of the saddle that we went over today. Horn, pommel, cantle, seat, jockey, fender, stirrup leathers, stirrup, latigo, skirt, twist, little skinny part, padding, and tree. And so those are some really good parts of the saddle to know, either if you want to impress your friends or if you're getting ready to ride. Some of these are certain parts of the saddle that you need to know for when you're learning how to get on or to mount your horse. Some of them are ones you need to know when you're trying to learn how to tack or put your supplies on your horse. And then, like I said before, we need to know the parts of the names of our grooming tools so that we can get our horses prepared properly. If you guys want to learn more about horseback riding, make sure to check out more Getting Girls Outdoors tips. Look for any programs that we might be having with the Girl Scouts and Mexico Trails about horse safety or learning how to ride. And of course, join us at camp next summer as long as we're able to have in-person programming. Thank you, and you can check out more information at www.nmgirlscouts.org.